On May the 24th, 2016, the Russian Ministry of Defense announced a request for proposals to implement the modernization of 9 Su-25 Grutch or Raven attack aircraft to the Su-25 SM-3 model at a cost not to exceed 3.3 billion rubles. The initial contract for 9 is likely to be followed by several additional contracts, as the Russian aerospace forces want to have at least 40 Su-25 SM-3 aircraft in service by 2020. Out of the total fleet of 180 single-seat Su-25 and Su-25 SM aircraft. The decision to continue the upgrades to the Su-25 indicate this attack aircraft has earned itself a permanent spot in the Russian inventory, with no replacement even being proposed. And there is no real need for a replacement, as the basic Su-25 airframe is well suited for the types of missions the plane was originally designed to perform. Su-25's history dates back to the 1970s, when a need for a dedicated battlefield fire support aircraft was identified by the Soviet Air Forces. Existing attack aircraft such as the Su-17 were better at attacking targets in the immediate enemy rear area. Given the threat posed by NATO medium-range air defenses and fighters, these aircraft relied chiefly on speed for protection. They were less suitable for operations directly over the front lines, where they would be exposed to small arms fire and short-range air defense weapons. And that type of environment required an aircraft similar to the original Sturmovix of the Great Patriotic War, the Il-2 and Il-10 attack aircraft, which relied less on speed and more on armor protection for survival. While counterinsurgency was not one of the missions for which the Su-25 was being designed, the 1980s war in Afghanistan against non-state actors, which the West at the time labeled freedom fighters rather than terrorists, and whom the West armed with advanced anti-aircraft weapons such as the Stinger missile, the Grutch proved to be the most effective fixed-wing aircraft in that kind of environment. Its long wings endowed it with the ability to carry large weapon loads and with higher loiter times, which were essential when providing top cover against ambushes to Soviet troop columns. A comparatively slow Su-25 already in the air was going to be on the scene far more quicker than the faster Su-17 awaiting the call on its airbase. Its high level of protection meant that the twin-engine Grutch could return to base even after one of its engines was knocked out by a heat-seeking Stinger. That effectiveness was only to be confirmed against a very similar type of enemy in Chechnya and most recently in Syria, where the Su-25s have represented a high proportion of the Russian air group. The decision to move forward with the Su-25 SM-3 modernization indicates that not only the Grutch has proved itself in the skies of Syria, but also that the need for a well-protected battlefield support aircraft is not going away, as the mission cannot be very well performed by other combat aircraft or even by drones. The newest Su-25 variant will incorporate GLONASS and GPS navigation systems and the SVP-2425 Gefest ordnance aiming system that allows unguided munitions to be used with accuracy approaching that of guided weapons. Russian media reports have noted that the Su-25 SM-3 upgrade is also intended to improve its ability to destroy enemy main battle tanks, which is only a reasonable priority in view of the recent NATO hostility towards Russia. It has not been reported how the anti-tank capability is to be provided, as none of the wide range of weapons carried by the Su-25 are dedicated anti-tank systems. It may be that the Su-25 SM-3 will utilize the experience of the Su-25T and the Su-39 programs, which attempted to incorporate the 9K121M Vicar-M supersonic laser-guided anti-tank missiles with a range of up to 10 kilometers. The missile system, which incorporates an automatic target tracker to enable the launch aircraft to undertake post-launch evasive maneuvers, entered production in late 2015 in order to arm Ka-52 Alligator attack helicopters. If so, the Su-25 SM-3 upgrade would provide the Russian aerospace forces with a sizable force of dedicated tank busters ready to reprise the anti-tank Sturmovik role of the Great Patriotic War.
It's easy to forget, given that the Russian air group at Hmeimim was wholly composed of Sukhoi aircraft, including the Su-24, 25, 27, 30, 34 and 35, that the word MiG has been synonymous with fighter for most of the post-World War II era. MiG Design Bureau's dominance started with the famous MiG-15 fighter of the Korean War fame, through MiG-17, 19, and 21 of the Vietnam War, Arab-Israeli Wars, and the India-Pakistan conflicts, and ending with the MiG-23 that was the frontline Soviet fighter for most of the 1970s and 1980s, along with the MiG-25 strategic interceptor. The dominance of the MiG family was eclipsed and ultimately ended by the sudden emergence of the Sukhoi Design Bureau, which spent decades building attack, bomber, and strategic interceptor aircraft such as the Su-15, and whose introduction of the record-breaking Su-27 meant the MiG suddenly became the junior partner in the Su-27 MiG-29 combination of fourth-generation fighters which entered service in the 1980s. The end of the USSR tilted the playing field even more in favor of the Su-27. It was not efficient to modernize and maintain two fighters with similar characteristics, so preference was given to the larger, longer-ranged aircraft capable of carrying a greater payload. While MiG-29s experienced some modernization, the Su-27 family was enlarged by the Su-30 SM long-range multi-role interceptor, the Su-34 tactical bomber, and finally the Su-35 Generation 4+ fighter, all of which were accepted into active service and ordered in large numbers. Moreover, older Su-27s were modernized to the Su-27 SM Generation 4+ level in order to keep them competitive in the air combat role. And of course, the T-50 Generation 5 fighter is also a Sukhoi design that will receive its Su designation once it is officially accepted into service. Today, 2 decades of MiG neglect are coming to an end. Already in the 1990s, a few dozen of the MiG-29 SMT Generation 4+ fighters entered service. These aircraft had improved avionics, a more powerful engine, extra fuel, and a wide armament suite, which makes it equally capable in both air-to-air and air-to-ground roles. Additionally, MiG-29 SMTs were recently ordered and have begun to enter service, with the first 4 new aircraft being deployed to the Russian airbase in Armenia to keep watch on the potential Turkish threat. Russian naval aviation has ordered sufficient MiG-29Ks to equip an entire carrier-based fighter regiment to supplement the Su-33 regiment that represents the Admiral Kutsinov's aerial component. But the MiG-29 family's ultimate member will be the MiG-35 fighter, which was originally developed for export, but which is soon expected to enter service with the Russian Aerospace Forces in 2017. Like the larger Su-35, the MiG-35 will be a Generation 4++ multi-role fighter equipped with an active phase radar array and a wide range of weapons. The renewed interest in MiG fighters serves several interests. The Sukhoi aircraft are all large, powerful, long-ranged aircraft, so much so that they are overkill in many situations, including close air support and providing battlefield air cover. Their presence would release the Sukhois for longer-range missions where their performance is crucial. The MiG-35 is also more than a match for most of the F-16 variants, which represent the bulk of NATO's fighter force, and will continue to do so for decades to come. So they provide a useful boost to Russia's tactical aircraft numbers at lower operating costs than the Sukhois. The final reason has to do with Russia's defense industry policy that seeks to avoid excessive consolidation. The problems associated with the F-22 and the F-35 are a direct consequence of Lockheed Martin having a de facto monopoly on fighter design in the United States. The JFX competition that led to the F-35 was a sham for which the Boeing design was not developed to win, but rather to hone technologies to be used in Boeing's own monopoly, namely unmanned combat aerial vehicles. Therefore, the US Air Force now has no choice but to pay the many excessive billions of dollars Lockheed Martin demands and accept a substandard product because it literally has no alternative choice. The Russian Aerospace Forces, on the other hand, will have 2 major design bureaus to choose from in the years to come, and there are already rumors that the MiG-35 will be followed by a lightweight Generation 5 fighter to supplement the heavyweight T-50.
Recent days and weeks have seen several news items pertaining to the future state of the Russian nuclear triad. The scope of modernization plans suggest the role Russia's strategic nuclear forces are to play for Russia's security foreign policy. The scale of Russian strategic nuclear modernization is impressive. President Putin recently attended the laying down of Alexander III, the 7th Bourget-class ballistic missile submarine out of 8 planned, which carries 16 multi-warhead Bulava SLBMs each. 3 of these ships are already in service, and the whole series is to become operational by 2020. It was also announced that the first Pakta heavy bomber flight is to take place in 2020, with the aircraft becoming operational by 2025. In the interim, Russia's long-range aviation will receive several squadrons of 2 160 M2 bombers, whose production is expected to resume in the upcoming years. The Sarmat heavy ICBM research and development has been recently declared complete, and the missile will begin launch testing in 2016 or 2017. The missile's unique capabilities include the ability to strike any target on the planet using multiple possible trajectories. For example, it could be used to strike North America not only by flying over the North Pole, but also using an alternative trajectory over the South Pole, which would render US ABM systems irrelevant. The construction of Vohezna DM over the Horizon Ballistic Missile Attack Early Warning Radars is continuing. Finally, the Russian General Staff announced the development of a system allowing strategic ballistic missiles to be retargeted following launch, which thus far was impossible to do because once the target selection was completed prior to launch, there was no way to alter it after the missile was in flight. This brief outline of current development shows that Russia is pursuing a sophisticated strategy of deterrence. The comparatively small and uniform French, Russian, and Chinese nuclear arsenals are capable of deterring only one threat, namely a nuclear attack on their national territory. The variety of capabilities inherent in Russia's triad means that its national leadership has a range of responses at its disposal and can use its capabilities to deter not only nuclear attacks against its territory, but also conventional attacks against its military targets, including outside of Russia's borders. Syria is an example of what these capabilities mean for Russia. It is no accident that Putin's request to raise the strategic nuclear force readiness level to 95% came when he instructed the General Staff to destroy any potential threat to Russian aircraft or ground facilities in Syria. The Russian military presence in Syria is not large enough to guarantee survival against a concerted NATO attack. 50 aircraft located at a single airbase, even one protected by the S-400, are still vulnerable due to their exposed location and lack of strategic depth. Russian conventional forces could not easily come to Khmeimim's aid in the event of it being attacked by NATO forces. What makes Khmeimim secure from attack is the credible and flexible deterrence posture. What makes the deterrence both credible and flexible is the variety and modernity of Russia's delivery vehicle force, which is not limited to having to launch a multi-warhead ICBM or SLBM, and which can penetrate all current or planned defenses. The credibility of Russia's nuclear deterrence is strengthened by the existence of a powerful conventional deterrent in the form of Caliber and KH-101 cruise missiles. The use of these missiles against ISIS targets was likely motivated to dissuade any countries hostile to Russia's presence in Syria because it demonstrated Russia could use these weapons to retaliate against any attack on Khmeimim. The target state would then have to choose between backing down or escalating, thus risking a nuclear exchange with Russia. If Russia simply had an ICBM and SLBM force, Khmeimim would be a much more tempting target because an ICBM launch would be a disproportionate response to the attack. Russia's strategic force modernization plans indicate that its leadership anticipates Syria-like scenarios in the years to come.